So here's something I forgot to mention in part one of this video, is you're definitely going to need a pencil and paper and a calculator. I'd recommend getting some kind of TI just because it has the ability to erase and look at what you previously entered. So in addition to the components such as the resistors, capacitors, transistors, and that sort of thing, you're going to eventually need to get some ICs. And a way of putting ICs in order is putting them on a piece of styrofoam, provided that they are not CMOS. Because if they're CMOS, they're static sensitive, and you really need to use material that is conductive, so there's no static discharge. So another piece of equipment you're going to eventually need to get is a function generator, which generates sinusoidal waves, or triangular waves, or square waves at varying frequencies and amplitudes. And in order to measure those signals, you're going to need an oscilloscope. So there's a sine wave at varying frequencies, and here is a triangular wave, various frequencies and amplitudes, and here is a square wave at varying frequencies. At some point you're going to see a circuit you're making as being possibly something you could utilize in a device that you could make. So a way you could do that is to get a smaller proto board and glue some battery pack on the back, build your circuit on there, and then throw it into an enclosure and have your device that way. Or if you want to have a more permanent solution and a smaller and more compact solution, you can get a vise and a perf board. This one has copper rings on the side so you can solder onto it, and you put your components in and use hookup wire to connect the components in the right configuration, and get a soldering iron and solder your components onto the board. So once you've soldered the components onto the board, it's a nice small board. You can use a nice small enclosure. So you put that inside the enclosure, connect the wires to the appropriate outputs or inputs, and tighten down the lid, and you have a nice small device, as opposed to using a much larger enclosure. And at some point you should really get a microcontroller, which you program with your computer to do certain functions with the ports as far as inputs and outputs. Quite a bit different than just using transistors. And I'd recommend getting something that comes with a nice book that shows you how to set up the proto board with the components, and it explains what's going on inside the circuit. This one was made by Parallax. It's a basic stamp homework board. I'm sure there are equivalents offered by other development board manufacturers, but I found this one to be really a great learning tool.